All right, I have a question for you. Is there too much testing going on in our schools? Yeah, is there like excessive testing? Well, in this episode of Educate to Elevate, we're going to talk all about testing, preparing for tests, but more so, how do you deal with excessive testing? Let's elevate. Hey, what's up? I'm Kantis Simmons.
And I'm Kelly Harmon. Welcome to Educate to Elevate, the inspirational podcast designed to motivate educators.
Well, you know, this podcast is designed for the teachers, the principals, the deans, the coaches, the counselors, and anyone that's in the business of working and serving students. And I have a huge announcement. This is episode number 19.
Yay.
And guess what? I have a new co-host. So if you guys would, show some love for my new co-host, Miss Kelly Harmon.
Yes. Yay.
So this is sort of like the Kantis and Kelly show now. Got a little
ring to it.
Kantis and Kelly show. Isn't that like something that was that on NBC?
Yeah.
It
could be.
Was it Kelly and Michael? What was it before?
Kelly and Regis.
And then Regis
and Kelly.
Regis and Kelly. Then he moved on. And then they had like
it was Michael Strahan
and Kelly.
And now it's just Kelly.
Just Kelly. Well, this is not just Kelly.
It's not just Kelly.
This is Kantis and Kelly. And Kelly, you know what? Thank you so much for choosing to come on with me for season 2. And
thank you for having me.
The cool thing about you, I think you look like Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, Lord.
All right, so
Don't y'all chime in with that.
I have my own Oprah Winfrey now on the show with me. But I brought you on because I was just so impressed with what you're doing in the area of education. So if I remember correctly, you've been in education now for more than 13 years?
Yes, that's
13 years.
13 years.
But you started off as
I was working for the Department of Education in Florida, and I was working in communications because I have a journalism background. And at the time,
told you journalism. You look like Oprah. Oprah in journalism.
Yes, I heard that all throughout college. But I started out with the mentoring initiative in the state of Florida, and that's what opened my eyes to my real passion, which is working with kids, being a child advocate, and an advocate for teachers as well.
Right. So you transitioned. You were working there with the Department of Education. They had this huge initiative where mentoring is concerned.
Correct.
You said you fell in love with students.
Right.
And then you transitioned into...
Right. As a result of my work with the kids every week, we had a mentoring initiative and we were going to the schools every week. I fell in love with kids. And from there, I transitioned into teaching full time. So I left Department of Education and I became a full-time teacher.
So you start off as teacher in the classroom, doing the instruction.
High school
teacher.
Journalism, teaching journalism.
Teaching the Oprah stuff. And then what happened there in the classroom?
Well, I quickly found out that I wanted to maximize my impactfulness. I wanted to really impact students on a daily basis, and it was outside of my 4 walls in my classroom. Right. So I aspired to go into administration.
Okay. And then you ended up being an assistant principal?
Assistant principal.
There in Florida, in the state of Florida?
In the state of Florida.
And now today, you're doing what?
Today, I've transitioned, and now I am an educational consultant, primarily training teachers on classroom management.
Okay.
So how to spend less time disciplining and more time teaching.
Right. So that's why I have Kelly with the Kantis and Kelly show of Educate to Elevate. Now, if you've never heard my story, I spent more than 25 years in school. I was this cool nerd Grew up here in the Atlanta area and spent, 5 years in pre-K, 7 years in elementary school, 5 years in high school, 4 years in college, and then 4 more years in grad school. Ended up working, cool jobs at NASA and developing contact lenses. But over the last decade, we sort of on the same mission where I just wanted to help students. And as I was helping students, motivating and inspiring students, I realized who was motivating the teachers. Nobody was motivating the teachers.
Yeah.
And so many times we deal with students with dropout and preparing them for getting better grades and tests. But I realized that nobody was preparing
the teachers.
And of course, you've heard the numbers, the burnout numbers.
Absolutely.
The burnout number, people are stopping and quitting for various reasons. Absolutely. So that's why we have this podcast, Educate to Elevate, because we want to inspire teachers and educators. So the question at hand is this: is there too much testing?
Is that a trick question?
So as a teacher, what were your colleagues saying about testing?
Well, testing, there's so many levels and layers of testing. They're high stakes exams. So now teachers' pay is tied with students' performance. In addition to the time, it's stressful for students, it's stressful for the teachers. A lot of teachers would complain that even though at the time, we were not supposed to teach to the test, but you really couldn't cover a lot of your content because, you had a large block of the year designated specifically for testing. So now you said two things there. Teachers' pay. Oh, yes.
Was directly related to.
It's a correlation.
With the performance.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And then the second thing I hear is that we have the issue of, you have your classroom curriculum at the same time preparing for the test.
Correct.
All right. So as we discuss this, down in the comments, I want you to chime in and let us know, is there excessive testing? Now, you did some homework.
I did.
All right.
For Georgia.
For the state of Georgia.
I'm coming from Florida.
Coming from Florida. All right, we're in Georgia here. What did you find? We talk about this thing of excessive testing. What did you find
Excessive. I mean, it's January and the kids are coming back to school, and literally every month, Kantis, kids are going to be testing in some capacity. So just to name a few of the tests that the kids have to take, you all have Georgia milestones. And basically the Georgia milestone is like Common Core. It's your Common Core for the state of Georgia. You all have NAEP, National Assessment of Education Progress. Okay. You all have AP. Of course, every state has advanced placement. You all have G-Kids here in Georgia. Georgia Kindergarten Inventory of Developmental Skills, ELL, that's pretty national, English Language Learners, GAA, specific to Georgia, Georgia Alternative Assessment, ELC, End of Course Exam, IB, International Baccalaureate, CTAE, which is your Career Technical Exam. And these are just a few that I actually saw. All
right, so I was looking up. Now I'm from DeKalb County. All right, this is like sort of in
born and raised.
Born and raised. All right, so we can just deal with the month of January alone. But if we back up,
the DeKalb calendar, testing calendar.
All right, DeKalb calendar. So let's go back to, if we started August of last year, we got the Georgia milestone. Week in August, September, Georgia milestone again. Then we have the GAA.
Now, August, Kantis, let me interject. When do the kids start school?
They start in August.
So you come in August.
And you're taking tests.
Oh, wow.
All right, so September, Georgia milestone. October, November, PSAT. November, CTAE, end of pathway exams. November, Georgia milestone again. December, Georgia milestone. Now, I'm sure you don't take the Georgia milestone every month. Sometimes it switches based on your year.
Absolutely.
And how you're doing. Then in January, here we go. We have access for English language learners.
The ELL.
We have Georgia milestone again. Georgia milestone, that's January. Georgia milestone in February. Georgia milestone in March. Then we have the CTAE, end of pathway exams in April.
That career technical.
Georgia milestone again in April. Then we have the International Baccalaureate, like you mentioned, April, May, January.
And IB would be just for those select kids that are in the IB program.
Right. So, but is there excessive testing? Some people can say yes, some people can say no. But I guess the question on this podcast today is, how do we deal with it? All right. How do we deal with excessive testing? What would you say is the first thing for a teacher to do where testing is concerned?
Well, teachers, I would quickly say, please don't stress out. It's a lot. It's going to be a lot for your planning. And it's a lot for the kids, but immediately try to put in some distressors so that you understand this is just something out of your control. So therefore you just have to go with it. A lot of times we have to learn how to accept the things that we cannot control. And testing in the state of Georgia, like most states, is something that we cannot control. These are policymakers. So do not stress.
So, I find that when teachers stress, the students stress.
Absolutely.
And if the students are stressing, then the parents are stressing, yes. Right? And if the parents are stressing, they come back to the school.
The administrators are stressing.
The administrators are stressing. So the first thing, when dealing with excessive testing is number one, do not stress. All right, Kelly, what do you think number two, second thing would be?
Number two, as a teacher, I would prepare my kids mentally for what's about to happen in terms of testing. Like Kantis said, you got a couple of Georgia milestones. I'm sure that those are probably different groups that will be testing. But I would share with them, the calendar, the Georgia testing calendar, and it's right there online. We were reading.
No, we're just not talking about Georgia. I mean, there are other people, other states.
Absolutely.
So whatever state you're in, the whole thing is that
whatever state you're in
is knowing the calendar.
Knowing the testing calendar, and share it with your students. That way the kids will not feel blindsided with all of the tests. Let them know, hey, this is the calendar, and this is a great time to do it because January in every state is the heightened month. It kind of kicks off the month of testing, or the season, I should say, or the semester for testing, because most of your exams are going to be in that spring semester.
Right. So number one, don't stress. Number two, share the schedule. What would be a good number three for them?
I would say go over expectations. A lot of times with testing, kids, they immediately get anxiety.
Right.
Anxiety because a lot of kids may feel that they don't do well on tests. So if you let them know, these are the tests we're going to take, these are the expectations, talk to them about retakes. A lot of these tests you can retake. And some of them, like I'm sure the Georgia milestone, you probably have to pass it before you go to the next level or before you're cleared to graduate. So kind of go over those expectations.
Right. Don't stress. Share
the testing calendar.
The third thing is to talk about expectations. What would be the fourth thing?
I would tell you as a teacher, when I was a teacher, especially the tests that are tied to a performance of mine. I mean, of course you can't, teachers, we know you don't teach to the test, okay? You can't teach the test. But I know what Common Core...
You know what? I heard this phrase. And,
in Atlanta.
Well, we had the big thing years ago. I had a few colleagues messed up, tied up in that. But that's not only happened in Atlanta. It's happened nationwide.
It has.
This is... It's a weird way. It's like, don't teach to the test. It's almost like, don't prepare your students for taking the test, but you want to tie preparation in the daily curriculum and the daily instruction.
Absolutely. With Common Core, supposedly whatever they're going to be tested on for the Georgia milestone or whatever state you're in, it's supposed to be embedded in the lessons. Right. So
it's almost like you design your entire year, your curriculum. It's like if you teach the curriculum, if you teach the instruction the correct way, your students should be prepared for any test that comes about.
That's what the theory is.
Versus trying to...
Did you hear what I said? That's the theory.
Yeah, that's the theory behind it. That's the theory behind it. But the key thing is that we want to prepare and plan.
Absolutely.
And making sure that, we're doing our best in the classroom. Absolutely. Giving instruction, sticking with that curriculum, and making sure the students are learning.
Absolutely.
And if they are learning, then...
they were going to do well on the exam.
That's the expectation.
That's the expectation.
It's expectation. So, regardless if you feel like there's, a lot of testing or not enough testing based on where you are, it's so important that number one, that you don't stress.
Don't stress.
Number two is that you go ahead and share the schedule with your students and your parents. And then thirdly, talk about the expectations. Talk about, hey, if you do great on this test, what will happen? Mm-hmm. If you don't do so well on this test, what will happen? Talk about those expectations. And the fourth thing, make sure that you prepare and plan. You have the schedule in front of you. You know what's expected of you as an educator. Make sure that you prepare and plan. Regardless of what goes on in your school district, in your state, testing is what it is. That's a part of the system. But the greater thing is making sure that we're educating our students so that they can elevate to the next level. It's kind of cool, right?
I know, that is. I like
you educate
that. Let's
the
do that
student. Yeah, you educate the students so that they can elevate to the next level. You get to educate to elevate. But, there are 4 things there. And we would love for you to chime in,
yes.
down below. Leave us a comment, maybe what are more things that you do to prepare for tests. There are other educators that, watch and listen to this podcast, and we would love to hear from you. We don't have all the answers. So down below, let us know specifically what you do to overcome excessive stress, overcome excessive testing. What do you do to stay free from stress?
Right.
What do you do to prepare and plan for tests? Let us know down in the comments. But not only that, don't be so stingy with this podcast. There are other educators out there, and we want to continue to inject fuels of inspiration to make sure that we have strong educators in this nation. So be so kind to share this podcast with other educators.
Absolutely.
Leave us a comment. Share this podcast, and we would love for you to go ahead and subscribe to this podcast.
Absolutely.
Whether you're watching it on YouTube, iTunes, whether you're listening to it on your radio, on your cell phone, on your mobile device, maybe you cooking dinner or riding to work, whatever it may be, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any of the episodes. Now, if you this is season 2. This is the beginning of season 2. If you missed season 1, simply go over to educate-to-elevate.tv and you can subscribe to this podcast. Well, Kelly, how you feel?
I feel great.
You feel good? This was the first.
This was my first one.
You think you can rock with me?
You all tell me how I'm doing.
Tell Kelly how she's doing, right? Tell Kelly how she's doing. Hey, I'm Kantis Simmons and
I'm Kelly Harmon.
And thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Educate to Elevate. And remember this, there's only one game in life that counts, and that's your A game. You got to say that with me.
Okay.
I'm going to do it again. All right.
Let's do it again.
All right, cool. All right. There's only one game in life that counts, and that's your A game. You don't have to do this. You look flicked. Put your hands down. Let me do that. You don't have to do that.
I wanted to do it too.
Hey, make sure you guys tune in. Educate-to-elevate.tv.
Thank you.